worst night of my life began with a forced smile, a cold cup of coffee, and the quiet realization that I had made a terrible mistake the moment I sat down across from her. I remember staring at the condensation sliding down my glass, wishing I could disappear just as easily. The restaurant buzzed with soft conversations and clinking cutlery, but at our table everything felt stiff, awkward, and painfully wrong. She checked her phone every few seconds, barely listening, barely present. Every answer I gave seemed to drift past her like background noise, and every attempt to connect landed flat. It wasn't just a bad blind date, it felt like being invisible in real time. If you believe that even the worst moments can turn into something meaningful, take a second to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel for more stories about second chances and unexpected miracles. Her name was Vanessa, and from the moment she sat down, I knew we were on completely different wavelengths. She talked about status, appearances, and people she barely seemed to respect, while I found myself shrinking into silence, questioning why I had agreed to this in the first place. A mutual friend had insisted we would be perfect together, but as the minutes dragged into an hour, it felt like I was trapped in a conversation that had no soul. I had just come out of a difficult chapter in my life. A failed business, a broken engagement, and the kind of loneliness that settles into your bones had left me exhausted. I wasn't looking for perfection. I was just hoping for something real, something kind, something that reminded me I wasn't completely lost. But that night, sitting across from someone who didn't even bother to look up when I spoke, I felt more alone than ever. Halfway through dinner, I had already decided I was going to leave early. I rehearsed the excuse in my head, something polite, something forgettable. My hand moved toward my wallet, ready to pay my share and disappear quietly. That's when the waitress appeared. She wasn't anything extraordinary at first glance, just another face in a busy restaurant. Her name tag read Clara. She had tired eyes like someone who had seen too much, but there was something steady about her presence. She refilled our drinks without interrupting, moving with a quiet grace that contrasted sharply with the tension at our table. As she leaned in slightly, placing the check near me, she paused for just a moment. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper meant only for me. If I were you, I'd stay. Then she walked away. At first I thought I had imagined it. The words lingered in my mind, echoing in a way that didn't make sense. Stay? For what? There was nothing here worth staying for. The date was a disaster, and the night felt like a complete waste. But something about the way she said it, calm, certain, almost knowing, stopped me from standing up. So I stayed. Another 10 minutes passed. Vanessa continued scrolling through her phone, occasionally offering distracted responses. I stopped trying to impress her. I stopped trying altogether. Instead, I found myself watching the restaurant, noticing things I hadn't before. The couple laughing in the corner, the older man eating alone but smiling at something on his tablet, the rhythm of people moving through their own stories. And then I noticed Clara again. She was at another table, kneeling slightly to speak to an elderly woman, her expression warm and patient. The woman looked frail, but Clara treated her with a kindness that felt genuine, not forced. It wasn't just service, it was care. Something shifted inside me. When Clara returned to our table to clear the plates, Vanessa barely acknowledged her. But I did. I looked up, really looked at her this time, and there was a brief moment where our eyes met. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't romantic, but it was real. And for the first time that night, I felt seen. Not long after, Vanessa announced she had an early morning and needed to leave. There was no apology, no attempt to soften the abrupt ending. She stood, grabbed her purse, and walked out with a quick goodbye that felt more like relief than regret. And just like that, I was alone at the table. I could have left then. I probably should have. But instead, I sat there staring at the empty chair across from me, thinking about everything that had gone wrong in my life. The business I had poured years into, the relationship I thought would last forever, the quiet fear that maybe I just wasn't enough. Clara approached again, this time with no rush in her steps. She didn't ask if I needed anything right away. She simply stood there for a moment, as if giving me space to exist without pressure. I don't know what made me open up. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or maybe it was the way she had told me to stay like she knew something I didn't. But I found myself talking, not in a dramatic, overwhelming way, just small pieces at first. A sentence here, a thought there. She listened. Not the kind of listening where someone waits for their turn to speak, but the kind where you feel like your words actually matter. Like you matter. She didn't offer solutions or empty encouragement. She simply shared that life has a strange way of bringing people to places they don't understand until later. That sometimes the worst nights are the ones that change everything. And in that quiet conversation, something inside me began to loosen. Before she left to attend another table, she smiled softly and told me something that stayed with me long after I walked out of that restaurant. "You're not as lost as you think you are. That night didn't magically fix my life. I didn't walk out with a new job or a perfect plan. But I walked out feeling different, lighter somehow. Like the weight I had been carrying wasn't as permanent as I had believed. Over the next few weeks, I found myself going back to that restaurant. Not every day, not even every week, but enough to notice that Clara was always the same. Kind, grounded, real. We talked more each time. Slowly, naturally, without expectations. I learned that she had her own struggles, family responsibilities, dreams she had put on hold, a life that wasn't easy but was still filled with quiet resilience. She wasn't waiting for something better to come along. She was making the most of what she had, one day at a time. And somehow being around her made me want to do the same. I started taking small steps, revisiting old ideas, reconnecting with people I had pushed away, allowing myself to hope again. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, doubts, moments where I almost gave up. But I didn't, because every time I thought about quitting, I remembered that night. The worst blind date of my life, the moment I almost walked away, and the quiet voice that told me to stay. If this story is touching your heart so far, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that life can change in unexpected ways, and subscribe for more stories that stay with you long after they end. Months later, my life looked different. Not perfect, but meaningful. I had started a new project, something smaller but closer to my heart. I was surrounded by a few genuine connections instead of chasing approval from the wrong people. And Clara, she was still there. Not as a miracle, not as some fantasy ending, but as someone who had become an important part of my journey. We didn't rush into anything. We didn't force a label. We simply existed in each other's lives, supporting, understanding, growing. Looking back, I realized that the worst night of my life wasn't a mistake. It was a turning point. It taught me that sometimes what feels like rejection is actually redirection, that not every connection is meant to last, but every moment has the potential to lead you somewhere better. And most importantly, it taught me that kindness, simple, quiet, unexpected kindness, can change someone's entire life. Before we reach the end, I have a special request for you. Comment below with one moment in your life that didn't make sense at the time, but later changed everything for you. Because stories like these aren't just mine. They're everywhere, happening every day, often when we least expect them. As I left that restaurant one evening, months after that first terrible date, I paused at the door and looked back. Clara caught my eye from across the room and smiled, the same calm, knowing smile she had given me that night. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel lost. I felt exactly where I was meant to be. If this story moved you, if it reminded you to hold on just a little longer, please take a moment to like, comment, and share it with someone who might need it. You never know who's on the verge of walking away from something that could change their life forever. Sometimes all it takes is one reason to stay.